Welcome to the Beware the Moon podcast. My name is Hannah, and today we're going to be talking about a movie called Longlegs that came out just this month. It stars Nicolas Cage as the titular Longlegs, and Micah Monroe as Agent Lee Harker. Those of you who are horror fans might recognize Micah Monroe from It Follows. That was her major breakout role, and we're glad to see her back in the genre. This movie is written and directed by Osgood Perkins, who is the son of the titular psycho himself, Anthony Perkins. Osgood Perkins, I mean, this is a really amazing... I believe this is his first directorial debut. Well, I mean, you only make one directorial debut. But this is his first directorial movie, and it slaps. Everything about this movie is really good. This movie is not so much scary and, like, boo scary, and it's not scary in so much as gore or anything like that. It's more of a psychological horror movie. I think very much so people leave this movie thinking, like, I still don't understand the why. So we're going to get into that a little bit towards the end of the review. And by a little bit, I mean probably a lot. I have, for various reasons, looked into both basically Satanism and then also Christianity. And so I have a little bit more insight onto the why of Longlegs. And also there is a verse in Revelation that specifically comes up quite frequently in the movie, so I'll be talking about that as well, but towards the end. Other than that, I'm not going to say anything else about this movie, aside from go see it. It's really, really good. The acting is amazing. The characters are good. The writing is good. I love Lee Harker as a character, and I love Agent Carter as a character as well. So go see this. The reason why I'm not giving too much is because the less you know, the more fun this movie is. So just go in with an open mind. Don't think you know anything about the movie. Just know, you star certain people, but just go in and enjoy the experience. And then come back and listen to the podcast. So, did you do that? Are you done? Did you do that? Okay, I'm gonna assume everybody did that. So I will get into the spoiler section of the podcast. If you're looking for just the theology theory of the why, basically, you can kind of skip maybe 30-40 minutes ahead. But essentially, this movie starts and the cold open is not... It's a literal cold open because everything is white and snowy. And that's really important. Colors are a really big factor in this movie. So we've got a white landscape. There's a little girl. She's coloring. And she sees this guy pull up to her house. And she goes out to check it out with her Polaroid camera. And this guy is, like, talking to her, and we see, like, it's really cool because the frame is small. Like, it's this tiny square with, like, the soft corners. It's just, like, it's an old school, like, framing device, I would say. Like, it's not... I don't know if they literally did it with physical film or not. It'd be really cool if they did, but it kind of switches the look from digital to physical when we're having flashbacks, and so this is a flashback, and Longlegs is there. He's talking to this little girl, and he's like, uh-oh, looks like I wore my long legs today. What would happen if I just... And as he bends down, it cuts to the open credits, which slap. Love the music. Love the style of them. This frame change is a really, really, like, subtle way of giving your brain indicators of what's going on, because they don't do, like, flashback cards. They don't do any of that stuff, like, oh, flashback 1982, none of that stuff. So when this movie does a flashback, the frame changes, and so you go from this tiny frame, which is the flashback, to it kind of zooms out and fills out the rest of the screen, and then you get the present day happenings of the movie, which is, like I said, filled to the full screen. So even though they don't say this is a flashback, your brain associates it automatically. Like, the first watch through, I at some point realized this is a flashback. Like, my brain said that, and I was like, how do I know that? And then I was like, oh my gosh, it's the frame. Like, it's just very neat, very psychological, just playing with that kind of stuff, and I love that. It's very smart, very smart. So we get the FBI is giving out orders to its people, telling them, we're going to go door knocking, you just pull out the picture. Have you seen this guy? Blah, blah, blah. Everybody's going in pairs because it's dangerous to be doing this. This guy's a dangerous guy. And they are not searching for Longlegs. So that's really important. And this is kind of part of the cold open, I would say. So Agent Harker goes with her partner, and her partner is a man, and he's like, I'll be the one to go and, knock if you want, and you can just hang back. And so she's just kind of like non-committally like, And I love the distantness, in Lee Harker. She reminds me of someone who is having an anxiety attack or who has been traumatized and is trying to filter through that as she's processing everything. It's like she's traumatized and everything is a trigger for her, but she's still trying to live her life and do what she thinks she needs to do. And so she's constantly filtering the triggers out of her brain. That's kind of what it reminds me of. So she's waiting in the car and she gets out. And he's talking to some lady at a house, and so she walks up kind of in front of a different house. Now, she's not in front of it, she's on the street, and her partner comes over and is like, what's going on? And she was like, that's the house. He's in there. And, of course, he's like, how do you know that? And she's like, I just kind of do. And she's like, we need to call this in. And he's like, whoa, we cannot call this in, based off of your hunch, I'll go knock and see if he's in there or whatever. So he goes and knocks, and Lee Harker is kind of waiting a little bit further behind him, and we can hear he's ringing the doorbell and someone's coming downstairs, and it's this really good tense moment. And as soon as the door opens up, the FBI agent's like, hi, and gets blasted in the head. He's insta-dead, just point blank headshot. He's on the ground bleeding. And this is one of the things I love about Lee Harker, especially in light of what just happened in this country. Everybody was making fun of the female Secret Service agents because they were afraid, and that's not the thing that matters. What matters is what you do when you're afraid. And I love Micah Monroe's choice to have Lee Harker constantly be heavy breathing as she's checking out a situation. Because you can tell she's afraid, but she's moving through that fear and working through it to achieve her goal. So her partner just got shot point blank in the head. He's lying on the ground, bleeding out. She pulls out her gun and goes after the murderer. She pulls out her gun and she's heavy breathing, just but she's still moving through, and she's doing everything that she should be doing. She's checking out every room. And this house has all these sheets, plastic clear sheets on everything, as if someone was fumigating maybe, or painting, or preserving everything. It's very strange. And so she has to move through all of this. I don't know how to describe it. It's kind of it creates a fog in the environment, so to speak. You can't see, you're not seeing things clearly. And I think that's kind of an important detail. So she goes upstairs, though, and she finds this guy. She tells him, don't move. And he says, don't worry, I won't. And so she's the one who catches the bad guy. She gets the credit, RIP to her partner for the day. But, she did her job. And then we cut to part 1. And by that, I mean, the screen goes red and it says part 1, his letters. So at this point, we're post this happening. Clearly Lee has been reassigned to another case, and by reassigned, I mean she's moved on from the previous case because it was closed. So she's sitting there in this vehicle with 2 other FBI agents, and I believe the woman is named Agent Brown, and the other one is a black man named Agent Carter. And Carter's talking about, they're sitting outside, on the street of just a cul-de-sac, and he's a really nice family used to live in that house over there. They used to do this in the community and that and the other, and then one day the dad just went nuts and killed all of them and then himself, and nobody knows why. And we found a note from this killer, and he always signs it Longlegs, and he's got this encryption code for these letters, but he always signs Longlegs in proper English. And so it's very strange because they're he's never in the house. There's never any evidence of him being there except for these notes. And so basically Lee is there to help them because they believe she's part psychic. They had done a test on her at the FBI, and we get to see it, where she's supposed to call out random numbers, and they're randomly generated by the FBI, and she gets half of them right. And so it's really funny because Carter goes, half psychic is better than not being psychic at all. And so we kind of get that she's a little bit psychic, but also she's just does good police work, I think. Like, she's just a good investigator. So anyway, he's explaining to her this case, the Longlegs case. This guy's been killing over the course of like 20 years, and it'll be just a family, and they'll seem like they really have it together. And then it's always the dad goes berserk and kills the whole family and then himself. And sometimes he does it with a shotgun, and sometimes he does it with a knife. There was a guy who did it with a hammer, but everyone in the family dies, and then he kills himself, and there's always a note from Longlegs, and it drives them up the wall because his fingerprints aren't anywhere, his DNA's not anywhere, like there's no sign of Longlegs himself, but he always leaves this letter. So clearly they know he has something to do with it. And Lee's looking at all the paperwork, and all these little girls in the family are on their 9th birthday, like about to be 9 or just turned 9. And they die within 6 days of their birthday, before or after. And these girls have a birthday on the 14th day of any given month. And so that's how Longlegs is picking his victims, but they're still not really sure how the fuck that has anything to do with like the dad and how he kills people, or the kids. Like, they're just like very confused about all of this. And so Harker stays late looking at all of this, and Carter takes her for drinks, and he drinks, she doesn't, and then she has to drive him home. And Carter's like, it's so funny because Lee is so standoffish seeming, and I don't think I think it's to protect both parties, essentially. Like, she's part psychic, so I'm gonna assume, like, we don't get any psychic flashes with her really that are like super revelation style, like Saw cut style, where it's like we're looking at all these things. Like, her psychic ability is done like within herself, and then she'll say something about it, so we don't get to look into Lee's head really, which I think is fun. I think that's a great like choice. Because then when she's standoffish to people like Carter, you kind of assume it's because she doesn't want to see something she doesn't want to see. Like, she's trying to protect herself and then also them from, getting dirty laundry about them or what have you. So Carter's like, you want to come meet my wife and kid? And she's like, I'd rather not. And he's like pissed. Like, you can tell he's like low-key offended. He's like, no, you're gonna meet my wife and kid, get out of the fucking car, basically. So they go in, and Ruby and Harker vibe, and Ruby is Carter's daughter. Her birthday is coming up, which of course, foreshadowing, that's a big red flag. And so Ruby and Harker are vibing, and Ruby's like, you want to come to see my room? And that's the funniest thing ever, because literally Harker is just sitting on her bed looking around, not saying anything, and same with Ruby's not saying anything, and you're just like, what is happening? Like, this is so weird. But then Harker looks over and notices one of her trophies for, I think it's gymnastics maybe, or dance. It's either gymnastics or dance, and it's missing its head, the lady on the trophy. And she's like, what happened to its head? And she's like, I don't really know. And she goes, I guess that is kind of like my thing, finding stuff, figuring it out. And so this is kind of, again, a little bit foreshadowing, which I will explain, like, it'll make sense later. So then Ruby's talking to her about how her dad doesn't want her to grow up too fast and blah, blah, blah. And the mom comes in and is like, listen, Agent Harker's had a long day. It's way past your bedtime. Let's let Agent Harker leave. And before, like, anybody does anything else, Ruby's like, can she come to my birthday party? And most people, like, you get giggles in the audience from that, because it's so awkward, because her mom can't say no. It's her fucking birthday party. And then, like, Harker probably feels compelled to say yes, because, like, what are you gonna do in that situation? And Harker is so funny, because she, like, you can tell she's, like, genuine mulling her decision over, and she's like, I'll be there. And it's so cute. It's just so funny, though. So then Harker goes home, question mark. And I don't think this is her actual home. I think this is like a cabin rented for her by the FBI, possibly. We don't really see any too much personal stuff in this house. We don't see much of this house, to be honest. So that's why I'm thinking it's not really Agent Harker's. But she's there looking over evidence, and she sees, essentially the devil out in the woods. Like, it's a flash of this giant goat-headed thing, which it looks really good. Like, that sounds really cliche, but it looks really good the way it's silhouetted. And so she starts breathing heavy, grabs her gun, and goes out there. And like I said, I just love her depiction of, yes, Lee Harker's afraid, but she has a goal, and she's going to achieve that goal regardless of her fear. Like, that's just so fun to me. So she goes out to check that out. She finds nothing because, I mean, he appeared in 2 seconds. He disappeared in 2 seconds. She looks back in her cabin, like the front window of her cabin where she had been sitting, and she sees someone walking through. And you can tell it's Longlegs, because Longlegs it's Nick Cage. And he's got some prosthetic makeup on his face to make him look a little different. And he talks he talks in a way that's like, ugh. Like, if someone came up to you and talked to you like that in real life, you would want to, like, wash yourself afterwards. And not because he's being gross, it's just his tone and the way he talks. So, anyway, and he's also, like, he's very pale white. From, like, his hair to his face to the clothes he wears. It's like a powdery sort of white, or a chalky sort of white. It's very, very strange, but it's, like I said, colors are really meaningful in this movie, and you have to pay attention to them in this movie. So she sees Longlegs walk through the house. She goes through and checks the house, again, breathing heavily, finds that he left a letter for her on her desk, and it's like, for Lee Harker, open on January 14th, which is Lee Harker's birthday. And so, and it's coming up. So he leaves, she, like, goes around and locks everything, and then she puts on gloves like a good smart FBI agent, because this is evidence, and starts looking at this letter. So she does not wait until January 14th, which, same. Why did you write that on there? Longlegs, like, you know she's not gonna fucking, whatever. So she opens it up, and because of what he wrote in there, like, on the inside of the card, he writes, like, a sentence, and beneath it's, like, his algorithm, like, his language. And so she's able to decrypt and decode what he wrote on the back of this card, and then all of the other notes, she's able to decrypt those. So she decrypts what's on the back of this card, and it's a rhyming thing, and it says something about, like, cutting off your mom's tits, which is amazing. It's just, like, a really good thing on a birthday card, because that's also what it is. It's a birthday card. It's a happy 9th birthday card. And it's so funny because I do that shit to my friends, and so I was like, I'm like Longlegs, but not the creepy version, please. Like, I swear I'm not killing people or, like, haunting them. It's just, I think it's funny to get, like, a 30-year-old a happy 9th birthday card or happy 3rd birthday, and then just write a 0 next to it. Anyway, then we get to part 2, all of your things. So Lee gets a call that there's been a new murder, pretty much, like, right after she's, like, done, like, Longlegs has visited her and dropped off this card, and she has decrypted everything. So there's been a new murder, and apparently it happened last month, but because the family was going away on vacation, no one really suspected that they were dead. But they never actually left for vacation. The dad went berserk and killed everyone and then himself. So it's been a solid month that these bodies have been in this house. So they do not look good. Like, they're pretty gnarly. And Longlegs left another note, and Lee is immediately able to decode it, and it's he writes down low, too slow. And so Carter is impressed, of course, because no one has been able to crack this algorithm, and Lee Harker did it, like, in 2 seconds. So they are looking at this, and it's rough. And then they go back to the office, and she's explaining to Carter there's all these references in all of Longlegs' notes to the fun we had at the Camera family farm. And the reason why the Camera family farm, because I was like, why wasn't this included, like this specific file included in the Longlegs files? It's because Longlegs didn't leave a note that time, and also the daughter was not home, and therefore she lived. So they did not think that this was a Longlegs murder, but it was the first of the Longlegs murders. So they decide that they need to go to this farm. So they go to this farm, and it's always, like, the other thing he writes in his note is X marks the spot. So they were walking around this farm, and Lee's like, those are the X's on the door right there to the barn. So, and I was like, immediately I'm like, those are not X's, those are crosses. So then they start being upside down crosses, of course. So they go into the barn, and then they go up into the barn loft, and I lost my mind a little bit because it is the perfect barn loft to, like, remake into a small apartment. Like, it would be lit as an apartment. It's the kind of barn my dad wants to live in, and I was like, just barn appreciation tweet right here, y'all. But they find a cross on the floor, and it's not just a cross, it's like a crucifix, like a legit, like, crucifix, like as big as your forearm, and it's nailed down to the floorboards. So he goes ahead, Carter does, and uses a crowbar to rip up those boards, and there's a note left on a box. Like, there's a big box, there's a note, and on the note it's an upside down triangle, which is a satanic symbol. And Lee Harker also found out that the satanic symbols, these satanic symbols specifically, like the upside down triangle, is like, it makes the algorithm, basically the pattern for who he's choosing to die and on what days they die. So because it's like, yes, these little girls' birthdays are on the 14th, but if you take out just like a paper and you write out all the days of the month, and then you plot each one and when they died, it makes, like I said, an upside down triangle. And so they take this note, and then they take the box and they open the box, and inside is a doll. And it's kind of it's a large doll. Like, it's maybe 3 feet high, maybe 4 feet, somewhere in between. And this doll is Carrie Ann. It looks like Carrie Ann. And so they take it back to the FBI forensics lab, and they say that, it's master craftsman work. It obviously looks like Carrie Ann camera, and the hair on it is real, what's left of the hair. And they said that they found this metal ball inside the doll's head, and they're like, we've been calling it the brain because that's, we found it inside the head. And so he's like, check this out, and he takes a ultrasound machine, and he takes the wand and he presses it to the metal ball, and it makes this weird sound that, like, triggers something in Harker. And so he's sitting there for a moment and letting the sound play for everyone, and after a moment he pulls the wand away, and he's like, that's really weird. I could have sworn it was whispering my ex-wife's name last night. And then he's like, but, like, I'm super tired. I've been overworked. So, probably just the sleep, and probably not actually what it was saying. But he can tell the metal ball is empty. And Carter's like, cut it open. I want to see what's inside. And he's like, nothing's inside. And I seriously doubt there's something inside of it that's going to help you solve this case, but we can cut it open for you. So then we get cut to Longlegs is at like a hardware store. And this scene was so funny to me because he goes and gets whatever, and he goes to check out. And at the checkout is a teenage girl working the counter. And she's maybe like 13, 14, something like that. And she's like, is there anything else I can help you with? And he puts his hands over his eyes and pretends he's a cuckoo clock and is literally like, cuckoo, cuckoo. And she goes, okay, I don't know what that was supposed to be. Can I help you with anything else? And then he's like, when's your birthday, little angel? And the girl is like dry as can be, like no expression, no emotion, just turns her head and is like, Dad, that gross guy is back again. And it's like, this poor girl has dealt with Longlegs like multiple times. It's so sad and uncomfortable. Like, it was so funny to me though, just like thinking about that. And then also though, she's just like, Dad, that gross guy is back again. Like, it's just good. So then Longlegs on his way home starts screaming, and he screams, Mommy, Daddy, unmake me, save me from the hell of living. Cool, buddy, cool. So at this point, Harker and Carter decide they need to go visit the mental hospital to talk to Carrie Ann Camera, because after her parents were murdered, she basically went catatonic. Like, she doesn't talk, she doesn't interact with things, like, she's just a living doll. Oh, that's as if that's a coincidence. So they get there and they're talking to the director, and he's like, it's the craziest thing. 20 years I've been here, and she hasn't had a single visitor. She's never talked, never spoken, and she gets a visitor yesterday, and suddenly a switch is flipped, and she's talking, and she's interacting, and there's light in her eyes. It's the wildest thing. And so they're like, can we look at the, like, do you know who visited her? And he's like, no, but like the visitor's log should say. So he like turns around this big book, and you know, her visitor is Lee Harker. So obviously Longlegs used Lee's name, and they go, this makes everyone laugh every time. It's so good. Like, when a whole theater laughs at something, I love that. Or they gasp at something, I love that. So Lee Harker is like, does your security check people's identifications, like when they come in, like IDs or anything? And he goes, well, that sounds like a good idea, but no, we don't require that, no. And you're just like, man, because this is like late 80s is when this movie takes place, so you're like, yeah, that kind of adds up. So then she goes and talks to Carrie Ann, and Carrie Ann basically, you know, she's like, do you remember who visited you yesterday? And she's like, oh, golly, I don't ever want to forget him. And she's like, anything he'd ask me to do, I'd do it. Just please as peaches to do it. And she's like, you know, if he asked me to jump off the roof, I'd do it. He asked me to strangle you to death right here, I'd do it. And, you know, and you're just like, okay, maybe tone it down a little bit. This is a cute kid. But she's not a kid, she's 20 something. But she's like, do you remember like what happened the day your family was murdered? And she talks about how her mom hated her because when she was born, her mom lost too much blood, and so it was a really traumatic experience for her mom, so her mom did not like her at all. And she said, you know, my daddy was a good man. And so she's in his lap, and he like strokes her hair weird, so I'm like, oh, like, and it's not her, it's the doll. So the doll is taking her place in this flashback, which is interesting and very meaningful. But it's creepy to me because, like, she's sitting on his one knee and he just, like, strokes her hair, like, really weird. Like, it gives bad vibes. And then as she's talking about how he was a good man, you just see him with an axe, and he is cutting off all of the cows in his pastures' heads. Like, he's just cutting all these cows' heads off, not doing anything with the bodies or the heads, just cutting off the heads. And you're like, I don't know how reliable of a narrator you are, Miss Carrie Ann Camera. What do you mean your father was a good man? And she says that's why he done it. And so he had invited a priest over to bless the house. And they did that, I guess, every month or something, which is really wild. And so the priest comes over, he takes an axe and axes the priest to death, then axes his wife to death, and then shoots himself. And Carrie Ann was at school. So obviously she got away, essentially. But not really. And so she's like, do you remember the doll? And she's like, she says something about, she says, you had a doll too, you old angel bitch. You flirtsy, dirtsy old angel bitch. And I'm just like, what kind of insult is the first two? But also, So at this point, you're like, oh, oh, Lee Harker also had a doll made for her that looked like her. And then it's like, oh, you know? So they go back to the FBI, and Carter's like, yeah, there's, you know, nothing inside the ball, nothing inside the brain. And so he asks Lee, like, do you remember what happened on your 9th birthday? And she's like, no. And he's like, your mom called the police a couple of days before because some guy had come to your house. And he's like, I think Longlegs visited you, so I want you to go talk to your mom. And so she goes to talk to her mom, and her mom, you can tell her mom is not all there, like mentally. There's something wrong with her. They never explain it, and Lee doesn't really like pry, I guess you could say. But it's really obvious and really understood that her mom is mentally unstable somehow. And her mom has tons of crap in their house. And there's a door that is locked that Harker can't get into. And so she thinks that's weird. She's asking mom questions about her 9th birthday. And her mom says, no one ever visited us. No one has ever visited us. Not family, not friends, not big bad wolves. No one. And so you're like, okay, like me being horror movie reviewer, you know, story nitpicker, I'm like, obviously she's hiding something. You know, no one would say to their kid, yeah, no big bad wolves ever came to visit us, and your kid's like 34. Like, no, that's not a thing. So anyhow, she says, nothing happened that day, but I've kept all your things. I kept everything. So Lee goes up and retrieves her trunk of stuff from her childhood room, and you can see there's like one drawing that keeps reappearing in the background of the frames, like, in the background of like the shots. And it's this sailboat picture with lots of triangles in it. And so that made me kind of like, wonder if that's purposeful, because it's in both the shot of Lee sitting on her bed in the present and of Lee rummaging through her trunk in the past. So it kind of makes me think that that's meaningful. So anyway, she has like she takes the trunk home. She's sifting through her Polaroid photos, and sure as shit, there's a Polaroid picture of Longlegs, and she has a flashback where she had been out there talking to him, and he said cheese and crackers as she like took a photo of him, and her mom walks up and is like, the hell are you doing here? Like, who are you? And he says, you know, I'm just here for the birthday girl. And she's like, I don't know you. Like, how do you know my daughter? And he's like, a friend of a friend. And she's like, who's the friend? And he says, the man downstairs. And so he's like, congratulations, you won. It's a gift from the church. And you're like, none of what you're saying makes sense, guy. Like, if I was the mom, I'd like pull out my, like, she's got like some kind of weapon on her. I think it's either a shotgun or a shovel or something. And I'd be like, listen, guy, I need you to leave ASAP Rocky, because no, this is a big solid no from me. Yeah. So then obviously Lee takes this Polaroid of Longlegs to Carter. And I don't think I've been clear about who Carter is. It's kind of like her partner, but also her boss. So that's kind of his role. He's somewhere in between those two. So then we have this manhunt for Longlegs. And to me, it is one of the funniest shots ever, because it's Longlegs in his weird white outfit, and he's got a backpack on, and he's got 2 suitcases he's holding, and he's standing at this bus stop in literally the middle of nowhere. Like, behind him is a field where, like, clearly all the corn has been cut, and then there's just fields on either side of him, and it's this one lane highway, and you just hear these sirens wailing, and on the one side there's like 5 police cars coming, and on the other side there's like 5 police cars coming, and you can hear a helicopter too, and you're just like, and Nick Cage isn't really like trying to run, like he is, but he isn't, like he's at a bus stop, sure, like trying to skip town, but also like he doesn't try anything as far as we know. And it's just so funny though to me, like this like extreme, like this man is so dangerous, and it's just like some fucking weird guy, and it's just, I don't know, it just cracks me up. So then we get the agent from the beginning, who I believe is Agent Browning, or Agent Brown, one of the two. She is playing a interview tape of Longlegs, and he asks when he gets to see Lee, and he's like, the interviewer's like, Lee who? And he's like, Lee Harker, it's her birthday. A friend of mine wanted me to give her this message. And then he starts singing happy birthday really fucking weird and annoyingly. And Agent Browning's like, pauses it, and she goes, that goes on for quite some time. And Lee is like, how long exactly? And she goes, 24 minutes. And I was like, how they just haven't hauled off and shot this man is a miracle. Because I'd be like, I can't take this. So, Agent Carter is like, listen, we've got him, but we don't have evidence. So we need to get evidence before we do anything else. Lee goes down to see him. And she has this big, long talk with him. And part of this talk is Longlegs rambling. And something he says is, she was the seventh. And she had a choice to either destroy it and destroy herself, or get down deep down into the dirt and do the dirty work. And you're like, what the fuck are you talking about? But it makes sense later. So hold on to that nugget. And Lee is also like, kind of like, what the fuck are you talking about? So just hold on to that nugget. He's like, they know that he's like a Satan worshiper, which again, I'll get into towards the end, like after I finish the synopsis essentially. But they're like, that's not a crime in this country. So we need like solid evidence. So they know he's a Satanist, but like that doesn't necessarily connect him to these crimes. He says this weird thing about she chose not to destroy it and destroy herself, and so he starts saying happy birthday to Lee, and Lee's basically like, we got you, you motherfucker, you're gonna rot in here forever. And then he says hail Satan, and then throws he pulls a talk to me, he just starts slamming his face into the table, and it is so gnarly and so good. Like, he slams his face to the table and his nose comes off, so you can see like the skeletal nose behind like the cartilage. It's so gross. He spits teeth out, there's blood everywhere, there's blood on Lee Harker. It's crazy. And then she gets pulled out, they come in, he's dead, and Carter's pissed off at her, which I'm just like, how are you gonna be mad at her, dude? Like, this man just offed himself. What do you want from her? Like, he's upset because they didn't get evidence, so now these families don't have justice. But let me tell you, as a victim, it's amazing when your perpetrator dies. Like, that is so much better than just throwing him in jail. Like, it's nicer because they could escape or something, like they could have a friend come and get you. Like, you, especially like in jail and prison, you make friends that are not the good kind of friends. So it's like, yeah, no, I would rather just my perpetrator be dead, because then I don't have to fucking deal with them and deal with the fear of that. So Carter's pissed though. Lee needs to go visit her mom because they think her mom knows something about Longlegs. Because she saw Longlegs that day, clearly she was lying about that. And so they're like, we need more info from your mom. So Lee agrees to go, and Agent Browning goes with her, and she's like, you didn't have to drive me. And she's like, I wasn't going to let you drive after what you just saw today. So she's like, do you want me to go with you to talk to your mom, or do you want me to wait here? And she's like, Lee's like, I'll go talk to my mom myself. You can just wait here. And she's like, okay, that's cool. She's like, I'm just going to tell mom we need to question her about the long leg stuff, and she should come with me, and, whatever. Cool. So Lee's walking through the house. The door that was previously locked is unlocked now. She's walking through the house, and she looks out through the kitchen window. And at the same time, we're looking at Agent Browning, but from the front of the car, so we can see the back windshield, and we see Lee's mom is standing there with a shotgun. And this got gasps both times I was in the theater. It was fucking awesome. So Lee's mom walks around, puts the shotgun in the window, and blasts Agent Brown in the head. And you don't get to see it, but you see Lee, like, reacting to it, and then you see blood is all over the front windshield. The front windshield is cracked. It's insane. And the mom walks around to the other side and fucking double taps her, and you're like, oh my gosh, mom, that's so unnecessary. Like, holy crap. Like, she's definitely dead, dude. Like, there's no way. So Lee is freaking out. She starts doing her heavy breathing stuff. She pulls out her gun, goes outside, and is confronting her mom. She's like, Mom, it's over. He's dead. It'll be okay. Like, you just need to come with me. And there's a doll standing there, and it's literally a doll of Lee as a kid, and it was Lee, how she was dressed the day Longlegs came to talk to her. Which, how anybody doesn't think that's fucking creepy and insane is beyond me. Because if you show up, if I've never met you before, you show up to my house with a doll that looks exactly like my daughter, first of all, absolutely not. But then especially, like, you show up to my house with a doll that looks exactly like my daughter and it's wearing the same outfit as her, hell no. I'm getting out a gun and I'm shooting you. Like, no, that's not, like, that's just, no. So, she's got this doll there, and the mom's got the shotgun pointed at the doll, and she's like, I'm gonna free you, and shoots the doll in the head, and this black smoke kind of plumes out, and Lee passes out, and then Lee remembers the whole story. So Lee this whole time has been like, he's got an accomplice. He can't be working alone. Like, he has to have an accomplice, because none of these people have ever seen him, and he's never at the crime scenes, like his fingerprints, nothing. So he has to have an accomplice. Well, it turns out her mom is the accomplice, because when he came back to do whatever he was doing. And the other thing that I think is super important is that he has brought this doll specifically to Lee, and Lee does not have a father. Like, it's never clear what happened to her father, if he died, if he left, if, her mom had a one-night stand and that's how she came to be pregnant with Lee. Like, we have no idea. So he shows up and brings this doll to their house. And the difference between their house and everybody else's houses is that she doesn't have a father. She only has a mother. So Longlegs comes in and ties up the mom. And the mom, in this flashback, is narrating and says she made a deal with Longlegs to help him as long as Lee doesn't die. And so her job is she dresses like a nun and goes to these houses and drops off these dolls. She knocks on the door and she says, I'm from the church. Congratulations, you've won. Here's a birthday gift for your daughter. And it's this doll. And she stays there until the doll does what it needs to do, because she explains that Longlegs puts a piece of himself and Satan into this doll, which is that brain. And that brain is what the devil uses to basically orchestrate the madness in the house and get the dad to kill everyone. And the other thing is, Carrie Ann Camera, the day Longlegs died, she jumped off the roof. So she was not freed she was not freed by someone, even like the FBI agent cutting that brain open. It doesn't free her in the same way that Lee's mom shooting the doll's head frees her, because Longlegs came and talked to Carrie Ann first. So, and the other thing is, Carrie Ann, I don't want to say she's complicit, but she kind of is. Like, Longlegs he's kind of worked his magic on her, so to speak. So, anyway, Lee is free. She wakes up. She's downstairs in her house, and this is Longlegs' lair. So literally, she's been living with Longlegs the serial killer since she was 9 years old. And Longlegs says in his interview with her, when you said you were going into law enforcement, we had a big laugh about that. And she said, but not her. She didn't laugh about that. And that thing he says about she's the seventh, she had to destroy herself and destroy herself or do the dirty work. And so that's what that is in reference to, is Lee's mom. So Lee, when she wakes up in the basement, hears a ringing upstairs, and she goes up, because she passes out after the flashback. Sorry, I didn't say that. She goes upstairs, the phone's ringing, she picks it up, and it's this creepy voice that says, you're late for Miss Ruby's birthday party. And so her mom had said, like, this doll has decided what you see and what you don't see for all of your life. And so you kind of are like, well, does that mean her psychic powers are actually Satan giving her info? Or, like, what is the deal? And I believe that she is psychic, but this doll has kind of hindered that her whole life, which is why she's only, quote-unquote, half psychic at the beginning. So she hangs up this phone. She drives Longlegs' vehicle, like his vehicle, to Miss Ruby's, and it's the same shot. It's so cool because it's the same, like, shot of her, like, when she brought Carter home, but instead she's alone, and she's in Longlegs' vehicle, and she rushes to the door, and Carter answers it, and he's like, you're just in time for presents. And she's like, is everything okay? And he's like, yeah. And you're like, no, like, that's, like, this is not Carter. Like, this is fucked. So she goes in, and of course her mom is there, and the doll is there, because her mom's not supposed to leave until the work is done. And so they're there, and she's like, Carter, you don't have to do this. And Carter says something, or Carter's wife says something about, you should go get something to cut the cake. And he's like, yeah, I should go get something to cut the cake. And he's like, why don't you come with me into the kitchen, and we'll go get something to cut the cake. And she goes, we'll be right back. And he goes, no, I'll be right back. You'll still be in the kitchen. And you're like, oh no, oh no, no, no. And Ruby is just mesmerized by this doll. And so Lee is trying to talk to her mother, and her mother is like, this is for you. If we don't do this, then we will twist and we will burn and we will twist and we will burn. Like, I'm doing this to preserve your life. And I've always done this, and I've done this for you. And so I think part of her madness is, like, her not being able to accept that, like, Lee does not want this. But then also, I think she's just fully invited Satan in, because, like, obviously you like, inviting certain things in, and this is part of the theology concept, like, Satan is not invited in so overtly typically. It's something small, like this doll. Like, this doll is not overtly satanic. It looks just like the little girl in this house. But because of what's inside of it, it changes everything. And so, I think, like, theologically, both from, a Satanist standpoint, a Christian standpoint, you don't have to invite demons or Satan into your heart or into your body to inhabit you. It will happen because of your actions. And so that is kind of what's happened with Longlegs, which is why he's so fucking weird and creepy, is because he's just like, he's not even human anymore. He's basically just a vessel for Satan. And then that's also what's been happening to Lee's mom, which is why she's fucking insane and seems like that. So anyway, she's pleading with her mom to stop. Her mom's like, absolutely not. Carter comes in with a knife. He's covered in blood. We just heard him murder his wife. Lee tries to get him to stop. He's obviously not going to do that. She shoots him, and she shoots him, like, in the shoulder and in the hand, and he goes down, and he's not, like, dead, I don't think, but he's definitely, like, down for the count. So then the mom is like, step away from the little girl, and pulls a knife out of her, like, bag. And so Lee shoots her mom in the head, and her mom dies. And then Lee turns to the doll, like, grabs Miss Ruby off the couch, turns to the doll, and tries to shoot the doll in the head, and the gun just clicks. And it clicks, and it clicks, and it clicks. There's no more bullets left. There's no bullets firing out of her gun. And I don't even think it's necessarily there's no bullets left. It's just that there's none firing out of her gun as we get this close-up of the doll. And then we go back to Lee's face, and then the movie ends. And so a lot of people, I think, are really upset at this ending because, like, what the fuck does that mean? Like, what happened? And basically, you cannot kill evil. You can get it out of you. You can fight against it, but you cannot end it yourself. That is not something that you can do, because other people will continue to choose what they continue to choose, which is an important, like, aspect of Agent Browning saying, he's a Satan worshiper, clearly, but he's allowed to do that in this country. Even if he's not allowed to do that in this country, he's still going to believe and do what he's going to believe and do. So that's one aspect of it that people are, like, really frustrated with, is like, what does the ending mean? And that's what it means, is you cannot kill evil. It's going to still exist. You just fight it and keep it out of your life, essentially. So that's the one aspect. And then the other aspect that frustrates people is, why the fuck is Longlegs doing this? Like, what is the point of this? And they talk about this verse in Revelation 13. And I believe Longlegs is using his doll making to try and enact the end of the world, possibly, but I mostly think he's doing it to just worship Satan, right? Something that people don't particularly think about or realize with Satanism, and Satanism is very loose term, right? It's kind of like Christianity, like you will, like, it's kind of like being a theist and a Christian. Like, a theist is someone who believes in God, but a Christian is someone who believes in a particular God and follows a particular set of ideologies, right? and they believe in a certain set of ideologies. So Satanists are like, they believe that Satan is the most powerful, but Luciferians are the ones who actively worship Satan. And Luciferian worship is extremely dangerous because of the things that Satan desires. So Satan desires the corruption of the innocents. So these dolls are the children because he's using these families' innocent children, specifically their little girls. Little girls are supposed to be loving and sweet, right? Sure, and spice everything nice. He's using them and their desires to murder everyone in this house. That's the vessel, right? So that's how he's corrupting the innocent in this film. He's using these dolls that look like these little girls, and these little girls love these dolls because they're a reflection of them, and they're beautiful. So it's a perfect version of them in their little girl minds, probably. And, that's just an assumption I'm making. But they're also just, enamored with these dolls because the dolls are well-made. They're beautiful dolls. And so he's using their innocent desire to kill an entire family. The other thing is, the reason he's using the dads to kill the entire family is because what is a dad supposed to do? A dad is supposed to protect and provide for their household. So by using the dad to kill everyone, that is further perverting something that God has intended. And this is assuming, in the worldview of Luciferianism, that both God and Lucifer exist, and that both God and Satan, are at war with each other. And Satan, both Christians and Luciferians understand that Satan can neither he cannot create things, but he can pervert and twist things. And that's what he desires, is to pervert and twist the things that God has made. So this is how he's doing that, and this is how Longlegs is worshiping Satan through this. So there's those two aspects. Then there's the single mom aspect, right? What is a mom supposed to do? A mom is supposed to provide love and care for their child. How is this single mom in this story providing love and care for her child? She's murdering other families. And so the reason why Longlegs is doing this is because he believes in Satan, he believes in the power of Satan, but specifically these things are all things that would bring quote-unquote glory to Satan. They would please him because Satan wants the destruction of God's creations. And that's theology based off of both Christianity and Satanism, true Satanism, which is not Satanism, it's Luciferianism. So, and I think maybe even a little bit of my take is that these dolls could represent something different. The acceptance of these dolls, I don't know, they could be a metaphor. The dolls could be a metaphor for something as well. Clearly, in Carrie Ann's case, this doll and her kind of swap places. There's a scene where Longlegs is putting a curtain over the doll, and he says to the doll, Carrie Ann's doll, I know you're not afraid of the dark because you are the dark. You're going to be in the dark for a while. And that's kind of assuming when he put that doll up in the barn. And then them taking the doll out of the barn, that's the day that Carrie Ann comes back to herself. And so I think the acceptance of this doll is the acceptance of Satan, whether they know it or not. And so this acceptance leads to being controlled by Longlegs and the doll. And so it's just very interesting to me. And the other thing about these dolls is the little girls don't accept them on their own. The little girls aren't the ones answering the doors. It's the mom or the dad. And another important facet of theology for Luciferianism and Christianity, which are kind of the opposing sides of one theology, is that parents are the gatekeepers of their house. They're the ones who decide what is allowed in the house and what is not allowed in the house. And so in Christian belief, a father can pray away a kid's demons because the father is the head of the house. He is the one that decides what comes in and what comes out of his house. And so if he tells a demon it is not invited, then it is not invited. And if he uses, God's name, he can make the demon leave. And so you see that is also at play, but in reverse. And I don't know how Osgood Perkins did such a good job of nailing kind of the theology without like so overtly nailing the theology. Like there's no big, exposition dumps about the theology of Satanism and Luciferianism and Christianity and all that. It's just, it shows that he understands it in the way he goes about making this movie and in the way that he portrays his villain. Just very fascinating to me. So hopefully that explains some of the why as well. I know a lot of people are really frustrated by that. To me, like I had already known all this stuff about, Satanism versus Luciferianism versus Christianity versus theism. Like I went through a period where I just studied different philosophies. And so I already understood this about, all of that. So as I'm watching, things are clicking fast for me. It makes a lot of sense as I'm watching it. And I know, like, as I'm watching it, I'm like, damn, Osgood Perkins really understands the theology and, like, the quote-unquote worship of Satan. And, like, it's just amazing to me. I don't know if perhaps it's because, he had someone like that in his life, or he experienced some of that, or if he looked into it. Like, I just have no idea. I know he has said that some of the movie was inspired by what it felt like to be in his house growing up. I don't know what that means. And I won't pretend I know. Osgood's the only one who knows what that is, really, from his perspective and his experience. But this movie is just, it's very smart. It knows what it's doing, and it does it well. There's also, like, the other thing about, the satanic Luciferian worship is, you have the corruption of innocence. That's white being tainted. And so that's why Longlegs is a white character. He comes when it's white out. It's snowy. Everything is covered in white. It's innocence. He's doing it on the 9th birthday. And this is the other reason why I think that perhaps the dolls could be a metaphor for something else, is famously there was a major pedophile who he made the, like, it's horrible, but it's kind of like their motto: after 8, it's too late. So after 8, they're no longer the same innocent child that they were. And so a pedophile is looking for someone 8 years old or younger. And so Longlegs visits all these little girls on their 9th birthday to truly taint their innocence by killing them. Their innocence is permanently destroyed by their own father because their father kills them. And so it's just this very, like, Longlegs clearly is a very accurate but very covert portrayal of satanic worship. Very interesting, very good movie, like I said. Nick Cage is just, he's hitting his stride now. The whole Wicker Man thing, big snafu there. Big don't do that. But I think it's because he's trying to play a serious role in a horror movie. Him playing a fucking weird guy is the perfect role for him. Like, and it can be a completely silent, serious weird guy, or it can be like a guy who oscillates between being weird and unhinged, like in, Color Out of Space. But, like, I definitely think his like acting niche is just a weird fucking guy. Like, especially in horror movies. He does amazing in that role. So good for him. Like, I envy that. Like, I wish that was my role in every movie that I ever, like, I'm not in any movies, but if I were in movies, like, I would love to be able to play those roles. Just a weird fucking person. Like, that's amazing. Good for him. And Micah Monroe is just incredible, like I said, with how she portrays Lee Harker, both as, like, an aloof woman, and then also as, like, a sidekick, and then also as a female FBI agent. And she's just great. Like, another kick-ass, quote-unquote, final girl to add to the list. I mean, she's just awesome. So, thank you guys for listening. Appreciate you all very much. You can find me on YouTube. You can find me sometimes on Twitter at Beware Moon. You can find me on Rumble, Beware the Moon Podcast, if that's not where you're listening. Also on YouTube as Beware the Moon Podcast. I do live streaming on Rumble as well. I typically will play some nonsense game. I've been playing a lot of Power World and Traveler's Rest and Stardew Valley. But I'm always... The dog sneezing in the background, excuse him. Bless you. But I'm always up for talking horror movies, so hit me up over there. I'm not sure what my next review will be. But it'll be good. It'll be the last Tuesday of next month. Thank you guys very much once again for listening. And until next time, be well and do well. Thank you very much.